The Stranger on Platform 9. A real-time English listening journey. You're waiting for your train. It's late. The platform is almost empty. And then, someone sits beside you. A total stranger. What begins as a simple conversation turns into an unexpected journey through memories, regrets, life decisions, and language. In this immersive 35-minute listening experience, you'll follow an unscripted real-time dialogue between two strangers, narrated in fluent, clear English, designed to train your ears, activate your emotions, and build your real-world comprehension. No subtitles, no translations, just the rhythm of real English. Your only mission: understand the story. It was already past 10 at night. The station was nearly empty, except for a few scattered passengers and the sound of distant rain tapping against the glass ceiling above. You stood by Platform 9, hands in your pockets, staring at the screen that kept blinking the same sentence over and over again. Delayed, estimated time unknown. There was no announcement, no crowd, just stillness and silence. The kind of silence that makes every tiny sound feel louder. A cough in the distance, the hum of the lights, the whisper of wind sneaking in from the tracks. You were alone, or at least you thought you were, until you heard footsteps behind you. Slow, steady, not in a rush. Someone walking like they had nowhere to be. Like they weren't waiting for a train, but just passing through time. They sat down on the bench next to yours. Not too close, not too far. You glanced over. A man, maybe in his late 30s. Long coat, black gloves, no umbrella. His hair was wet from the rain, and yet he didn't seem bothered. His eyes were calm. The kind of calm that comes from either deep peace or deep exhaustion. He looked at you. Not in a strange way. Just looked. And then, without asking for permission, he spoke. "Long night, huh?" You nodded, half smiling. "Yeah, delays. Again." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, still staring at the tracks. "You ever wonder why some trains are always late, and some people always on time?" he said, almost like it wasn't a question, but a thought he'd been chewing on all day. You raised an eyebrow. "Maybe the people aren't on time. Maybe the trains are just too slow." He chuckled softly. "Or maybe we're all just waiting on the wrong platforms." That line sat there for a moment, hanging in the air like fog. You didn't know what he meant. Maybe he didn't either. "I take this route every week," you said, breaking the silence. "Same schedule, same delay." He turned slightly, looking at you now. "And yet, you still wait for it. What else can I do? Maybe take a different route, or leave earlier, or later, or don't leave at all." You laughed, unsure if he was joking. He didn't laugh with you, just smiled. "Sorry," he said, shifting his coat. "I'm not great at small talk." "That was small talk?" He grinned. "That was my version." You relaxed a bit. His voice was low, calm, with that kind of tone that made every word feel intentional. There was no rush in the way he spoke. He paused naturally, like silence didn't scare him, like he was used to it. A light above flickered. Somewhere in the distance, a train passed by. Not yours, not his, just one more stranger crossing through. "What about you?" you asked. "Heading somewhere specific?" He tilted his head. "Not really, just moving." You waited for him to say more, but he didn't. "Must be a strange reason to take the train." He looked down at his shoes, then back up. "Stranger things have moved people." There was something in the way he said that, like he meant it more than he wanted to admit. The screen blinked again, still delayed. "Mind if I ask where you're from?" you said, just to keep the flow. He nodded slowly. "Somewhere between too far and too late." You smiled, not expecting a real answer. He noticed. "I mean it. he said. Sometimes it's not about where you're from. It's about what you left behind. This time you didn't reply. Silence came back, but now it wasn't awkward. It was shared. Two strangers. One night, one train, one delay, and a conversation that had just begun. He tilted his head slightly, staring out across the empty tracks as if searching for something that had already passed. Then, just like that, his tone changed. Lighter, casual, a shift in the air. "Do you drink coffee?" he asked. You were caught off guard. "What?" "Coffee," he repeated, now looking at you. "Do you drink it?" You nodded. "Too much, probably." He smiled. "Same. It's the only reason I wake up some days. That, and wondering if the station will finally fix that blinking light over there." You looked across the platform. Sure enough, a neon sign buzzed quietly, blinking half-lit letters that read, Café, OPN 24/7. The E had given up weeks ago. He continued, "There's a tiny coffee cart just outside this station. Most people miss it. But the woman who runs it, her name's June, makes the strongest espresso I've ever tasted. She always says the same thing. No matter how long the train takes, at least you've got something warm to hold on to." You let out a soft laugh. "She sounds like a poet." "She is," he replied. "She just doesn't know it." A pause. "She also thinks I work in finance," he added, "which is funny because I've never worn a tie in my life." You raised an eyebrow. "So, what do you do?" He looked down, tapping his fingers against his knee. "I fix things, old things, typewriters, film cameras, watches, things people forgot how to use." "Seriously?" "Seriously," he nodded. "People think everything has to be fast now. But there's something about old machines. They only work when you slow down." There was a quiet moment. Then you said, "That's the most peaceful job description I've ever heard." He smiled again. Not wide, but real. The kind of smile that doesn't try to impress, just exists. He asked, "What about you? What's your thing?" You hesitated. "I work with words. I write things." "Books?" "Not yet. Ads, emails, captions. You know, the stuff no one reads but everyone sees." He laughed. "So we're both in the business of forgotten things." You shrugged. "Maybe." There was another silence, but this time it felt like space. Space to breathe. "You ever think about leaving it all behind?" he asked suddenly. You blinked. "What do you mean?" He leaned back against the bench. "I mean, just stepping off the train, not getting on, and walking somewhere instead. No GPS, no plan, just away." You weren't sure how to respond. "I think about it all the time," he said. "Then I remember, I'm terrible at directions." You laughed, maybe too loudly. It broke the weight of the question, but it didn't erase it. He glanced at your bag. "You travel a lot?" "Sometimes," you said. "Mostly to cities that all look the same after midnight." "Ah, the neon loneliness." You turned to him. "The what?" "The neon loneliness," he repeated. "Big cities, bright signs, but no one looks up. Everyone's just walking shadows." You didn't say anything. Because he was right. "I used to think movement was freedom," he continued. "That going from place to place meant I was doing something right. But after a while, you realize you can run in circles for years and still be in the same place." Another train passed behind you. This one didn't stop. He looked over and said, "That one's never for us, is it?" You shook your head. "Nope." You both sat quietly again. But this time the silence wasn't empty. It was full of unsaid thoughts, like a second conversation happening just below the surface. Small talk, about coffee, about cities, about people you'll never meet again. And yet somehow it all felt bigger, not because of what was said, but because of what was felt. The screen above flickered again. Still the same message. delayed. You looked at your phone. No updates, no notifications. Just time passing slowly, like thick syrup. The stranger beside you hadn't moved much. He seemed comfortable with waiting, as if he had nowhere better to be. His eyes landed on your suitcase. "You packed light," he said. You looked down. "Just the essentials." He tilted his head. "That word always fascinates me, essentials. What counts as essential?" You shrugged. "A change of clothes, a toothbrush, a book." He smiled. "Not a single emotion in that list." You paused. "Should I have packed emotions?" He leaned forward. "Well, depends. Some people travel to escape them. Others carry them everywhere like invisible luggage." You laughed, but something about his tone made you think. He nodded toward your suitcase. "Mind if I guess what's inside?" You raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." "Okay," he said, adjusting his posture like a magician about to perform. "You've got 3 shirts, none of them ironed, a pair of shoes you rarely wear, headphones with a broken left ear, a journal with only the first 5 pages written, and a photo tucked between the pages." You stared at him. "That's disturbingly close." He chuckled. "We all carry the same things, just in different colors." You reached for the handle of your suitcase, not to open it, but just to feel the weight of it. Suddenly, it seemed heavier. He noticed. "Don't worry, I'm not psychic, just observant. People don't travel to bring things, they travel to feel lighter." You asked, "What do you carry?" He pulled a small notebook from his coat pocket. Leather-bound, worn edges. He held it up. "This," he said, "and a screwdriver." "A screwdriver? For watches?" "Of course." He looked at the notebook. "This has names, stories, fragments. I write down things people tell me, strangers mostly, things they say when they think no one's listening." You leaned in slightly. "Why?" "Because words disappear faster than memories, but if you write them down, they survive a little longer." He flipped to a page. "Want to hear one?" You nodded. He read softly. "I always drink the window seat so my anxiety has somewhere to look when I'm pretending to be calm." You were silent for a moment. "Wow," you said. "I didn't write that," he added. "A woman on a flight to Lisbon did. She was afraid of flying but traveled every month anyway. Said fear should never sit in the pilot's seat." You stared at the notebook, thinking about how many moments had been captured in that small space. Moments most people forget. You asked, "Do you ever read them back?" "Only when I feel lost." "And does it help?" "Sometimes," he said. "Other times, it just reminds me that everyone's carrying something." The rain outside had slowed to a mist. Drops slid lazily down the windows like tears that no longer had the energy to fall fast. You reached into your own bag and pulled out your book, the one you always carried but rarely opened. You flipped it open. Page 5. The last sentence you had written months ago. "I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know this isn't it." He saw it, read it, then closed his notebook and said, "Maybe that's where all journeys begin." He leaned back on the bench, eyes closed for a second, as if letting the words settle. You stared at your book, at that sentence on page 5. The ink had faded slightly, but the feeling behind it hadn't. Not even a bit. He opened his eyes. "Can I tell you something strange?" You nodded slowly. "Sometimes I feel more myself around people I'll never see again." You didn't respond immediately. You knew exactly what he meant. There's a kind of freedom in anonymity, a space where masks fall off, not because someone rips them away, but because no one's asking you to wear one. He added, "There's this moment, when you meet someone by accident. No context, no history, no expectations. And suddenly, you speak a little more honestly. You reveal things you didn't even know were hiding inside you. You found yourself nodding again, not because it sounded poetic, but because it felt accurate. He turned slightly to face you. You ever notice how easier it is to talk to someone on a plane, or a train, or here? You smiled. It's like temporary therapy. Exactly, he said. You don't need to impress them. You just share, then leave it behind. He stared at the floor. One time in Prague, I met a guy at a late-night diner. We talked for hours about art, silence, love, death. I never asked his last name. He never asked mine. But I think he understood me better than people who've known me for years. You listened closely, as if afraid the sound of your breathing might interrupt the memory. He turned to you. Do you think we all wear versions of ourselves for different people? You said, I think we're like rooms in a house. Some people only see the hallway. A few enter the living room. But strangers? Sometimes they stumble into the attic and don't even know it. He stared at you. That's a beautiful way to put it. You added, it's why some people make you feel seen, not because they know you, but because they're not trying to fit you into who they think you should be. There was a long pause after that. No one said anything, not because the conversation had ended, but because it had deepened. A train passed by again. Not your train, not his. Just another reminder that life doesn't stop moving even when you do. He looked down at his hands. I used to be afraid of quiet people. You tilted your head. Why? Because I thought silence meant judgment. That if someone wasn't talking, they were thinking something negative. You said, and now? Now I think silence is a gift. It's like trust without noise. The platform lights flickered once more. Your phone buzzed, still delayed. He asked, if this train never came, would you stay here and talk to me all night? You smiled. If there's coffee involved, he laughed. Deal. Another silence. Then he looked at you and asked, what's something you've never told anyone? That stopped you. You weren't sure if it was a real question or just a test of the moment. Either way, your mind searched, slowly, carefully. Then you said it. I'm afraid that if I ever slow down, I'll realize I don't actually know who I am. He didn't react. He just sat with your words, like they belonged to both of you now. And then, quietly, he replied, that's exactly why I fix things. Because every time I open a broken machine, I remember, even the most complicated parts were designed to work together. You looked at him. He wasn't smiling this time, and yet you felt lighter. Not because he had solved anything, but because he didn't try to. The station had gone quieter. The only sound now was the distant humming of machines behind the walls. No announcements, no voices, just the soft, rhythmic click of the station clock. 1 second after another, like footsteps walking away from the present moment. You checked the screen again. The train still hadn't arrived, still delayed, no estimated time, no explanation. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes fixed on the tracks. Maybe it's not coming, he said softly. You asked, do you think we should leave? He didn't answer right away. Then, maybe this is where we're supposed to be. You tilted your head. Stuck? He smiled without looking at you. Paused. That one word changed the weight of the moment. Paused, not lost, not abandoned, not forgotten. Just paused. You leaned back, letting the thought settle. The idea that not everything needed to move. That maybe stillness had a purpose too. He said, do you know the most dangerous thing I ever believed? You turned toward him, waiting. That progress always has to look like movement. You let out a quiet breath. What does it look like to you now? Sometimes, he said, progress is letting go of something you thought you needed. You stayed silent. He added, I once waited for someone on a platform. 3 hours. She never came. But in those 3 hours, I realized I didn't want her to. You glanced at him. He clarified, "It wasn't about her. It was about me waiting for something that had already ended." You said, "I think I've done that. Not with a person, but with a version of life I thought I was supposed to live." He turned to you fully. "Tell me about it." You hesitated, then spoke, slowly. "I always imagined myself somewhere else, in another city, in a better job, with people who got me. And I thought if I just kept moving, one day I'd wake up in that life. But the more I moved, the more it felt like I was just running from where I started." He nodded. "And now?" You shrugged. "Now I'm on a platform, talking to a stranger, wondering if this is what it means to arrive." There was a long pause. Then he asked, "If I told you this wasn't random, would you believe me?" You raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "What if we were both meant to miss something, just to find this?" You laughed nervously. "That sounds like something out of a movie." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe we just underestimate the power of being exactly where we are." You looked around. The lights felt warmer now, softer. Even the cold air seemed to have calmed. The absence of the train wasn't a problem anymore. It had become the reason for everything that followed. He asked, "Do you believe in signs?" You said, "I believe in meaning, even if I have to create it myself." He smiled again. "That's good enough for me." And for a moment, just a brief one, the entire station felt alive. Not with noise, not with movement, but with the quiet understanding between two people who had no reason to meet, and yet couldn't imagine not having done so. The train still hadn't come, but neither of you looked at the clock again. The silence between you no longer felt awkward. It was the kind of silence that made room for thoughts to breathe, for meanings to shift, and for questions to rise without needing answers. He tapped the notebook on his leg, fingers slow and deliberate. "Have you ever thought about what your voice really sounds like?" he asked. You tilted your head. "You mean, like on recordings?" "No," he said. "Not the sound. I mean your voice. The one people remember. The one that leaves a mark when you're no longer in the room." You paused. He added, "Most people think it's what they say, but I think it's what they choose not to." You looked away, as if that thought needed space to echo before you could reply. He watched you for a second, then flipped to the back of his notebook. A single page. Blank, except for one sentence, scribbled in black ink. "What do you wish someone would ask you, just once in your life?" You stared at the sentence. Something about it made your chest tighten. He handed you the notebook. You took it without speaking. You held the pen, waited, then, carefully, wrote your answer beneath it. He didn't look. He just waited. After a moment, you gave the notebook back. He read what you wrote, not out loud, just silently, and then closed the notebook. "I hope someone does," he said. You replied, "I think maybe you just did." The platform was empty now, just the two of you. The occasional echo of a distant door, but mostly quiet. He stood up. "I should go," he said. You asked, "Even without the train?" He smiled. "Some destinations don't need tracks." You stood too, slowly, feeling something shift in your chest. A weight moving, not disappearing, but changing shape. Like grief remembered differently. Like peace after a storm. You reached out your hand. He took it. Not a handshake. Just a moment of human contact that said, "I see you. I was here. We both were." He turned to leave, and you let him. You didn't ask his name. He didn't ask yours. Because some truths don't belong in introductions. They live in the space between two people who met only once, but met completely. You looked back at the screen one last time. Train canceled, but you didn't care. You picked up your suitcase, and walked out into the world, lighter than you arrived. A new voice enters. You're back home now. Days have passed. Maybe weeks. That same suitcase sits half unpacked in the corner of your room, as if unsure whether the journey is really over. And then, one night, you open a drawer. Find an old envelope. Blank. No stamp. No address. But inside, a letter you wrote to yourself years ago and never sent. You begin reading. And as your voice narrates the letter aloud, we hear you reflect on dreams that aged. Promises made in silence. Roads not taken. And the quiet grief of unlived versions of yourself. You remember that platform, the stranger, the conversation. You ask yourself, did that moment really happen? Or did I dream it because I needed it to? In the end, you fold the letter back. You don't throw it away. Because even unread, it still matters. The letter ends with a line. Don't be afraid of stillness. Some truths only arrive when everything else stops. The final moment. A quiet morning. You stand at a new station now. Different place, different time, and yet something familiar about the air. The rhythm. The way people carry silence like luggage. You're not waiting for someone else this time. You're waiting for yourself. But now, you know what to listen for. Not just sounds, not just English, but meaning, emotion, the human weight behind words. You remember what he said. Your real voice isn't what you say. It's what you choose to say when no one's forcing you. And as the train arrives this time, right on time, you step forward without hesitation. Not because you know where it leads, but because now, your listening has changed you. And with every step, you're ready to speak back to the world, in a voice that is finally your own. You didn't plan to open that drawer. It was one of those idle nights, the kind when time doesn't feel real and silence presses against your chest like the weight of a memory you forgot you had. You were looking for a charger, or maybe something else you couldn't quite name. And then, there it was. Thin, crumpled, sealed with a yellowed piece of tape that had long lost its stick. The envelope had no address, no date, no stamp. Just your own handwriting in faint blue ink. You recognized it immediately, even though it looked younger, less certain, less tired. You sat on the floor, legs crossed, back leaning against the cold wall. The room around you dim, quiet. You opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. It began with your name, not just written, spoken, in the voice of who you used to be. You started reading. I hope you still believe in something. That was the first line. It stopped you. Because the truth is, you weren't sure. The letter continued. I don't know where you are now, or what you've lost, or what you've become. But if you're reading this, it means you haven't given up yet. And maybe that's enough. You paused again. It felt too close, too honest. You read on. I wrote this to remind you of things you already know, but might forget when everything feels heavy. You smiled without realizing. That was exactly the kind of thing you would have written at that age. I hope you still carry that one song you used to play at night, the one that made you feel like the world might actually understand you someday. I hope you've cried at least once this year. Real crying, the kind that leaves you softer, not broken. Your eyes burned a little. You kept reading. I hope you've walked alone in a city that didn't speak your language. I hope you've gotten lost on purpose, just to see how it feels to find your way back. I hope you've said, I love you, without expecting anything in return. I hope someone said it back. The letter was full of hopes. Some you had lived, others you had buried, and some still sat quietly in the back of your chest, waiting for the right time to bloom. Then came the part that stopped you. I hope you've stopped waiting for someone to save you, and started becoming the person you needed when you were younger. You read that line again, and again. It echoed louder than anything else in the room. You weren't sure what to do with it, so you sat in the silence it left behind. The last lines were short. Be kind, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Don't chase a life that looks good. Build one that feels right. And if you're tired, rest. That's not failure. That's survival. Love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers in forgotten letters. Read this again when you forget who you are. You folded the paper slowly, held it for a moment, then placed it back in the envelope. But this time, you didn't hide it. You left it on your desk, right beside your keys. Because the next time you walked out that door, you wanted to remember exactly where you came from and who you promised to become. The train arrives this time, but you're not rushing, not running, not even holding your breath. You're just there, standing on the edge of the platform, watching the metal beast slow down with a rhythm that no longer overwhelms you. You used to think speed was everything. That fluency meant fast. That confidence was loud. That understanding had to be immediate. Now, you know better. The doors open, you step in. No hesitation, no inner monologue about what could go wrong. Because today, for the first time, you're not focused on being understood. You're focused on listening, truly listening. The world inside the train is a strange orchestra. Conversations layered over mechanical hums, occasional laughter, a distant phone ringing, the soft shuffle of shoes. English all around you, and yet you feel calm. You sit by the window. A child across the aisle stares at you, then points to your book and asks, "Is that good?" You smile. "Yeah, it's kind of beautiful, actually." They nod like they understand. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. It doesn't matter. The connection is there. Language happened. You look out at the city. People moving like they have somewhere to be. Like their footsteps are punctuation marks in an invisible story they're writing in real time. And then you remember something. A moment. A phrase. That stranger on the bench who said, "Your voice isn't what you say. It's what you choose to say when no one's forcing you." It hits different now. You've spent so long trying to sound right that you forgot the deeper question. What do you actually want to say? What would your voice sound like if you weren't afraid of getting it wrong? You reach for your phone. Open the voice recorder app. Not to practice, not to rehearse, just to speak. You press record. And for a moment you don't say anything. Then, quietly, you begin. I used to think learning a language was about rules, grammar, vocabulary, sounding like someone else. A pause. I was wrong. Another breath. It's not about sounding native. It's about sounding like you. In another language, still you, but freer. You smile. The words are flowing now. Not perfect, not polished, but real. I realized fluency isn't a finish line. It's a feeling. It's when you stop trying to perform and start trying to connect. You glance around. No one's watching. No one's listening. And yet somehow, it feels like the most honest thing you've ever said. I'm not memorizing phrases anymore. I'm building something. A way to express what matters. In a voice that's mine. Even if it shakes sometimes. You stop the recording. Play it back. And you don't cringe. You don't correct yourself. You just listen. Because for the first time, you recognize the person speaking. It's you, fluent, not because you used advanced words, but because you said what you needed to, without fear. The train slows down again. Your stop is next. You gather your things, heart still steady. As the doors open, a man standing by the exit turns to you and says in perfect English, "I liked what you said." You blink. You heard it? He nods. Not all of it, but enough. You smile. Thanks. He holds the door for you. And as you step out into the world, it feels different. Not because the city changed, but because you did. You're no longer chasing fluency. you're choosing your voice, and that choice will echo far beyond today.